Like Dad, I've always been a Ford man. The Falcon Squire wagon was unloved in 1964, but turns heads today. The Americans call them woodies, but the panelling, it's just fiberglass and plastic. But it's a passion that Shannon's understands, which is why my Fords are insured with Shannon's. And now, so's the home.
Call Shannon's on 13 46 46. Shannon's, insurance for motoring enthusiasts.
Gasoline is proudly brought to you by Shannon's, insurance for motoring enthusiasts, and the following sponsors. I'm Michael Curzon, producer, creator of Gasoline. Hope you enjoy.
Welcome back to Gasoline, viewers, and if you like Mad Max, make sure you stay seated and don't go anywhere. We've still got 20 episodes to come in this season. We're going to be on at 8:30 every Tuesday night, channel 74 Metro and 64 Regional. Stay tuned, there's some great stuff coming your way.
My name's Adrian Bennett and I'm originally from England, and I went to the cinema 31 years ago, saw Mad Max and Mad Max 2 and was blown away by it so much that I came out here to the Outback in Silverton near Broken Hill and built a museum to pay homage to Mad Max 2. Now let's have a look around. Now the photos that you see on this wall and also around the place were given to me by extras and cast and crew that were in Mad Max 2. When they'd heard about what I was doing here, they were quite forthcoming with things, and with the photos, and they would turn up on occasions and just say, look, we'd like you to have these and put them on display. So that's where all these photos come from, yeah. The photos are actually from private collections and were actually given to me on the condition really that they're not copied or reproduced, and certainly never sold, and they are really unique to us now here in the museum. So that was kind of one of the conditions that they were given to me. Quite important. I mean, they tell a different story completely to what we saw on screen, and yeah, they really are a great addition to the museum. Greetings from the Humongous. Just kidding. Now, the actor that played the Humongous, his name was Kjell Nilsson. He was actually a Swedish bodybuilder, and way back then he was over here training athletes for the Moscow Olympics. And while he was here, he met Australian actress Kate Ferguson, and they eventually got married, and Kate convinced Kjell to come back to Australia and get into movies. And as far as I know, he only ever did 3 movies. Mad Max 2 was one of them. It was his biggest role. Unfortunately, you never saw his face, but he had a huge impact in the film. And everybody I've talked to that met Kjell said he was a wonderful fella. And that's Kjell there. This buggy here you see on display was used in Mad Max 2. This is the picture of it on set. This is how it looked in the film. Most people will probably remember this buggy as the one that went back into the compound with the bad guys in along with the other 2 bikers just before the compound was destroyed. After filming, it changed hands a couple of times in Broken Hill before it eventually ended up with the person that approached us and asked us if we'd like to have it on display here. So yeah, that's the story behind this one. this is another replica. It's actually of my favourite car from the film, actually, the bad guys or the Marauders Ford Landau. This was the car that was used in the opening chase of the film, and it was destroyed. It was destroyed pretty much straight away. The turbos and the exhausts, of course, were just for show. Nothing, they weren't connected up. Nothing worked like that. But yeah, so that's what this is. Yeah. Well, this photo you see here is actually the aftermath of the tanker roll, which was one of the last shots of the film. You can see the crew members here. They're actually getting the driver out. That was Dennis Williams. Actually, Dennis wasn't a stunt driver at the time. He was just a truckie that ended up doubling for Mel Gibson. But you can see the crew members making sure he's all right, and they're just going to pull him out before the last final few shots of the film are done. But yeah, that's the story behind that there. Yeah, well, this photograph here of Mel Gibson, where he is there actually, is actually on just round the bend where the tanker was rolled. He's actually on the road to the reservoir. This could be Mel being queued up for a scene, or it could even be a promotional shot. Somebody could have just called his name and taken the photo as he's looked round. But it's definitely taken at the opening part of the film. Well, this photo here actually shows one of the stunts that went wrong. It's actually a motorcycle that was ridden into a buggy. But what happened is the rider was travelling a little bit too fast, or faster than he should have been, and on the impact of the buggy it lifted it up and he caught his leg, and it actually broke his leg in two doing this stunt. And up here we can see Guy Norris afterwards in hospital, and then he came back to the set on crutches. But yeah, that was probably one of the most spectacular stunts that was performed in the film. You can run, but you can't hide. This is actor Vernon Wells. I've met Vernon on a couple of occasions. Once was back in England about 8 years ago. I was lucky enough to meet him. And then last year we were lucky enough to have Vernon here for a couple of days. He came back from Los Angeles and spent some time with us here, which was absolutely fantastic. And while I was here, he actually told me and explained to me how he ended up getting the part in Mad Max 2. Because Vernon was quite, I suppose, not old, but quite old to start his acting career. This was his first major film. He was 36 years old at the time. But way back in the 70s, he was doing late 70s, he was doing a stage play with a young lady called Sandy Gore, who was an actress and at the time was dating director George Miller. And George had asked Sandy if she knew anybody that could play the part as Wes, this psychotic biker in Mad Max 2. And she said, well, I think I know just the person. And she introduced Vern to George. They sat down alone in a room together, discussed the part, went through the type of role that it would be, and that's where the character of Wes comes from. And of course, when you look at him, you can see just how psychotic he was in the film. Absolutely perfect for the role. And after this, after Mad Max 2, he was offered quite large roles over in Hollywood, and that's where he ended up going. And that's where he is today.
Don't forget to check out the all-new Shannon's Club. Once you sign up, you can create your own profile, including things like your previous cars, your current cars, the history of those cars, modifications and photographs. You can also search for other members' vehicles, keep up to date with things like news and current events, videos, check out your local car clubs and jump on the forum to talk to other like-minded enthusiasts about your passion. Modern Plating, for all your plating needs. With over 50 years experience in delivering quality to the automotive restoration industry, whether it be bumpers, die-cast pieces, polishing and repairs to aluminium or stainless steel mouldings, even ceramic coatings, Modern Plating has it covered. modernplating.com.au, located 4 to 6 King Street, Oakley, Victoria. Remember, Modern Plating, when quality matters.
This here is the original music box and the original boomerang from Mad Max 2. Now these items after filming were given to the sound mixer, Bruce Lamshed, who'd kept them all these years, but initially he'd used them to take the sound from. And the music box, to get the sound from the music box, it was actually recorded when it was played on a saucepan turned upside down. The sound from the boomerang was also taken from a spring on the end of a piece of string and also a stick, and then the sounds were all manipulated together to get the sound you hear in the film. Bruce contacted me a couple of years ago now and told me about these two items that he had and asked if we were interested in them. And of course we were. I mean, these are just fantastic items. Everybody remembers the music box and the boomerang. So it was, yeah, it was absolutely fantastic to add these to the collection here in the museum. There was actually 4 boomerangs that were used in Mad Max 2. There was this one, which is the Hero boomerang. There was another one identical to this, which was made in aluminium, which had holes in. That now belongs to Emil Minty, the Feral Kid, or it's always belonged to Emil Minty since filming. That's the one that was used to do the stunts on the wires. And then there were 2 wooden boomerangs. The one that you see Emil throw is actually wooden, and the one you see in the Golden Youth's head in the scene where the boomerang hits the guy in the head, that was a wooden one as well. But yeah, that's the actual Hero boomerang that you see in those photos there with Emil. That's the actual one. There's a really interesting story about Jimmy Brown, who actually played the Golden Youth, who was actually killed with the boomerang in the head. Way back when they were in pre-production for the film, down at the Kennedy Miller headquarters, they'd actually ordered pizzas. And George Miller looked down when the guy turned up to deliver the pizzas, and he just said, who's the guy down there? And they said, oh, it's the pizza delivery guy. And he said, go ask him if he wants to be in a film. So they went down and asked him, and he kind of looked a bit puzzled. So they said, look, can we speak to your boss? So they talked to his boss and said, look, can we borrow one of your employees for a few weeks? And it was Jimmy Brown, and that's how he got the role. He was actually delivering pizzas to the crew in Sydney at Kennedy Miller, and that's how he ended up with the role as the Golden Youth. Now the skull you see here was the actual bonnet ornament that was used on the Ford Landau. Now it was actually designed by the production designer Graham Grace Walker, and then it was actually shaped and carved by one of the vehicle team, one of the art department called John Murch. Now you can see it clearly at the start of the film, but when it came to actually rolling the car and destroying the car, the skull was removed, and it's been saved all these years, and now it belongs to a private collector who's been kind enough to loan us it, and it now sits here as part of the collection. There's a really interesting story about the dog that was in the film, the Blue Heeler. When they were looking for a dog, George Miller went to the Pound in Yagoona in Sydney with Dale Aspin. Now Dale Aspin was the animal handler, and she was the wife of Max Aspin, the stunt coordinator. And they looked up and down in the yard for a dog, and eventually they came across Dog, and that was his name, Dog. The lucky thing for Dog was the day after they actually picked him for a role in the film was the day that the dog was going to be put down, because they actually hadn't found anyone that wanted to claim him. So the dog was absolutely fantastic in the film, did it as he was told and everything. After filming, The dog actually went to Jerry Gorsler, who was one of the stuntmen who lived over on the coast in Narooma, and had a happy life until the day he died in 1989. I think there was about 3 months training with Dale Aspin before it was ready for the role. Also, another thing that happened as well is the dog was actually quite scared of loud noises, so the fact that it was riding in the V8 with Mel caused a few problems, and eventually they had to end up making some little earplugs for the dog. And you can clearly see in one scene in the opening chase that you can see the dog's kind of cowering in the seat because of the noise of the engine. But as I say, they overcame that with these little earplugs. But yeah, the training took about 3 months, and also the dog also had to bond with Mel Gibson. So when it was here on set with him, nobody was allowed near the dog when it was with Mel. So it had to look like it was Mel's companion. Now, this car was originally built in Melbourne. It was, it's actually an identical, well, it's a replica, but it's identical to the stunt car. That was a double car that was used in Mad Max 2. That's the one that they wrecked, and the one that Mel Gibson drove in the film. It was built for a reunion that they had about, or probably 10 years ago now, here in Broken Hill. And then Emil Minty, the Feral Kid, had a little bit of fun in it, used it as a little bit of a burnout car. And I think the story goes that Emil wanted to actually register it to drive on the road, but of course you can't really legally register these things. And eventually it worked its way to me, and it now sits here in the display, and inside we have Mel Gibson and Bruce Spence, and you can see the Feral Kid on the back just keeping guard over it. But yeah, that's the story behind this car. This is actually the real mechanic's contraption, or buggy, whichever you want to call it, but this was actually used by actor Steve J. Spears. He played the paraplegic mechanic in the film, and he would swing off there, off those handlebars, and his companion in the film would push him round in it, and it was his transport. It had actually been in Silverton after filming. It had been in Silverton for 25 years after filming, and it was down in a museum on the corner, and eventually we spoke to the owner, and they decided that they would like to sell it, and yeah, so we took ownership of it, and it sits up here now, outside here in the vehicle display.
Ladies and gentlemen, the coolest show in all of drag racing is heading to Sydney Dragway for the Aeroflow Outlaw Nitro Funny Car Extravaganza, Saturday, November 23, featuring US superstar Ron Capps and more. Sydney Dragway, where excitement lives.
Hi guys, Mark here from Rocket. Today we're going to talk about some LS parts. We've got some pacemaker headers to suit LS. We've got some Holley carburetors and some new E85 stuff we're going to talk about. And we've got some LS Edelbrock intake manifold combinations. So we'll start off with the intake manifold. This new manifold from Edelbrock is a sort of a retrofit. It can be used on any LS engine, cathedral port or rectangular port. The cathedral port's available in dual plane, and the rectangular port's available in single plane. So the dual plane, more torque, more street car; single plane, more mid-range to upper range, your street race performance sort of thing. The MSD LS1 controller here, when you're running a carburetor on an LS1, you've got nothing, obviously no EFI, no computer to run your coil pack. So this Edelbrock / MSD controller will do all the running of your coils on any LS or any carbureted equipped LS engine. So quick identification on the ports here. This is cathedral port. You can see here at the top is shaped exactly like a cathedral, and you've got your rectangular port as well for your L92, LS2, LS3 later model LS1 cylinder heads. Holley carburetors, I mean, these have been around for a long time. Everybody knows them. These are Holley HP series, adjustable air bleeds, 4-corner idling. This one's got your standard style float windows, whereas the new HP Ultras have got your all aluminium construction tube, lightweight, float control windows here, 4-corner idle, adjustable air bleeds, carb spacers, as you know we've got plenty of those here, and pacemaker headers. These are 4-in-1 headers we've got here. Same thing with the single plane, 4-in-1s are your more mid-range street race, upper horsepower, and your tri-wiser for your towing, low to mid-range street performance. Covering up most of this stuff here. Just a quick flashback on the LS intake manifold situation. A lot of guys are asking why to put a carburetor on an LS1. LS1 motors are really good engines, like factory hydraulic roller cam, good solid strong bottom end, good flowing cylinder heads, and a lot of guys don't want the complexity of EFI. So we can run this sort of manifold on an LS, whether it's a cathedral port or rectangular port, put a carburetor on it, go with the MSD Edelbrock controller, and it can go into any hot rod, any early, HQ style retrofit, early Holdens, and even Commodores now are getting a lot of LS1s, VB to VL Commodores, pretty common swap. Pacemaker headers make a lot of combinations for LS1 into HQ, LS1 into LXLH, and LS1 into VB to VL Commodore. So that's a pretty broad spectrum of your retrofits for LS, carbureted or EFI.
Well, this car I originally purchased in Texas, believe it or not. It was originally a Melbourne car, and it went over to Texas to a Australian Ford nut. A chap over there was importing Australian Falcons, and he just loved them. And it was in 2000, the year 2000, and I was looking for one, I checked on the internet, and this one came up. It was just a base car, very basic. There were bits and pieces missing, but structurally it was sound. The engine was in really good condition. And I phoned the chap up in Texas, and we struck up a deal, and the car was shipped to the UK in 2001. I went down and picked the car up, and then took it back to Bradford, where I come from, and then that's when the transformation started of turning it into the Interceptor. All the parts you see on this vehicle all came from Australia. That was probably what took most of the time up, was waiting for the parts to arrive. But being a panel beater and a painter, it wasn't hard for me to put the car together. It was actually a lot shinier than this. I mean, it's covered in dirt now for the effect of how it looked in the second film. But yeah, over the next 18 months, I worked on the car and eventually finished it, and yeah, this is a result of 18 months hard work, but yeah, enjoyable work, but yeah. This is another replica of a car that featured predominantly in Mad Max 2, the Charger. That was actually featured twice. They doubled it up as another car. I ended up meeting somebody in Broken Hill who's become a good friend of mine now, but he had this in his shed, and just jokingly I'd said to him, I would love to have this in the museum, just as a joke, and he said, well, let's go for it. So that's what we did. So for the next 12 months or so, we spent working on this car and turning it into a replica of the car in the film. So that was, yeah, it was quite a surprise when he agreed to do it, because I mean, they are quite a rare car now. Now, the original car in the film, it was a shame to see what happened to it, but what happened to the car in the film was it was actually petrol bombed by the gyro captain, and it was burnt out. It was completely written off. There was nothing left of it. It was completely burnt out altogether. So that was, yeah, ended up in the scrapyard. That was another one that ended up in the scrapyard.
We're the Gasoline Twins. Hope you're enjoying the show.
And here's a date to mark in your calendar, viewers, Saturday the 23rd of November. And if you're not in Sydney, I suggest you try and get there. Our good friends at Aeroflow are bringing us the Outlaw Nitro Funny Cars. With over 10 cars there on the day and drivers from New Zealand and America, including the famous Ron Capps and his funny car, the Allo Hooker, it's going to be a great event. And there's something there for everyone. Face painting for the kids and fireworks for the whole family. So I hope to see you there, Saturday the 23rd at Sydney Dragway.
And we'll see you next week on Gasoline.
Gasoline is proudly brought to you by Shannon's, insurance for motoring enthusiasts, and the following sponsors. I'm Michael Curzon, producer-creator of Gasoline. Hope you enjoy.